My name is Rick Petherbridge, and I'm here to talk tennis. And the subject today is the ATP year-end final. I have a pretty controversial opinion about the year-end ATP final, and this is it. I think that the person that wins the year-end final should actually get more credit and deserves more credit than anyone who wins a Grand Slam event during that year. And right now the case is that the Grand Slam winners tend to get a lot more attention. But I'm saying when you look at all of the facts, the truth is that it's harder to win the year-end final than it is to win a Grand Slam event. And the players that do win the year-end ATP final deserve more credit. And this event should be more prestigious. And tennis players and tennis fans should give it more attention, and the winner should get more credit. So let me explain the evidence that supports my position, right? The reason why the year-end final is more difficult to win is because there's only 8 players that qualify. Those are the 8 best players that year. And in order to win the final, you're going to play a round robin. So you're going to play 3 top 8 players in the world. And then you're going to go to a semifinal and you're going to play 2 more matches. So in order to be the winner of the year-end final, you have to beat 5 top 8 players in the world. And there is no tournament, including Grand Slams, where you have to play against that kind of competition. And so to back up this statement, let's do a little comparison. So for example, the most recent Grand Slam was Roland Garros, and Nadal won Roland Garros, right? By the way, giving him 20 total Grand Slams, and he deservedly gets a lot of recognition and attention for having won so many Grand Slam events. But let's take a quick look. So in order for Nadal to win Roland Garros, he played 7 matches. But the caliber of the competition of those 7 matches is way below what he would have to do to win the year-end final. So let's take a look and see. When Nadal won Roland Garros, the player he beat in the first round was ranked 81 in the world. He's never going to be in a year-end final. He's never going to be considered for a year-end final. He's nowhere near the top 10. The second player he beat was ranked 193 in the world. The third player he beat was ranked 73 in the world. And the fourth player he beat was ranked 116 in the world. The average ranking of the first 4 players that Nadal beat at Roland Garros was about 100 in the world. Now, if you look at his last 3 matches, so the quarterfinal, he beat a player that was ranked 44 in the world. In the semifinal, he beat a player that was ranked 9 in the world. And in the final, he beat the player that was ranked 1 in the world. So I think it's fair to say that he really only had 2 tough matches. The only 2 tough matches for him was the semifinal against Schwartzman, and then the final against Djokovic. And my argument is that generally, if you look at most Grand Slam events, the winner only has to play 2 or 3 tough events, right? Now, sometimes they play like a tough player in the quarterfinal. And let me back this up further, okay? So if you think that what Nadal did at the Roland Garros was an exception. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so right before that, Donald Thiem won the US Open. In the first round, he played the player that was 112 in the world. In the second round, he played the player that was 129 in the world. In the third round, he played a player that was ranked 40. In the fourth round, a player that was 22 in the world. In the quarterfinals, a player that was 29 in the world. And in the semifinal, he played Medvedev, who was 6. And in the final, he played Zverev, who was 7. Again, it's the exact same scenario that Nadal had, where he only had 2 matches against top 10 opponents. So let's use that as what I think is sort of an average scenario for a Grand Slam event, and then compare it to what the winner of the year-end final has to do. He has to play 5 matches against top 10 opponents, right? By definition, you only get into the year-end final if you're in the top 8. I think it's a simple proposition to say that it's harder to beat 5 top 8 opponents than it is to beat 2 top 10 opponents. And so that's why I think that the ATP final year-end tournament, the winner of that deserves more credit, and it's a harder accomplishment, and it should be given, it should be more prestigious than a Grand Slam event. And for a true tennis fan, I think that, we have this tendency to just look at who wins the Grand Slam. So, right now we have this competition. Federer has 20 Grand Slams. Nadal has 20 Grand Slams. And Djokovic has 18 Grand Slams. But if you take into account and you say, well, wait a minute, we shouldn't just look at the Grand Slams. Let's look also at how they did in the year-end final, because that may be a better indicator of just who the greatest player is. And so let's do that. So let's, for the top 3, let's see how they did in their career at the ATP final. So, and look, let me start off. I'm a Federer guy, so I'm going to admit that off the top, but these are just facts and you can't dispute them. So Federer won the year-end final 6 times. He made it to the final of the year-end final 4 more times when he lost in the final match. So he's got 6 year-end final wins, and 4 more times he made it to the final. That's 10 times in his career, which is really impressive. And I think it speaks a lot about what a great player he is. And I think that if you're going to use total Grand Slam wins, and you're serious about deciding who the best player is, you also have to consider the year-end final. So let's move on to Djokovic, right? Who's also in this contest for the greatest of all time with 18 Grand Slam wins. He's won the year-end final 5 times. And he also made it to the finals, losing in the final twice. So he's got 7 career times when he made it to the finals, and 5 where he actually won the finals. Again, not as good as Federer, but very impressive. So let's move on to Nadal, who's the 3rd person that we always talk about in terms of this greatest of all time, and who is equaling Federer's 20 Grand Slam wins. He has never won the year-end final, okay? And I would argue that's not a mistake, right? So if you play your whole career and you go and play the year-end final every year, you qualify every year, and you never win the final, that says that you're not playing at the same level, the same caliber as Federer or Djokovic. And I think if you're arguing that Nadal should be considered the greatest of all time, you have to answer this question. If he's so great, Why didn't he win any year-end finals, right? Federer won 6 and Djokovic won 5. So I'm arguing in this race for the greatest of all time, Federer should have 26, Djokovic should have 22, and Nadal should have 20 because he's never won the year-end final. He did go to the finals once, losing in a final to Djokovic in 2013. All right, so look, that's my position. I know it's a somewhat controversial position. Most people don't give as much attention or prestige to the year-end final. But I think it's a really important tournament, and I think it tells you a lot about a player and how that player does when he's matched only against the best players in the world, right? Doesn't have any easy matches, doesn't get to play somebody who's out of the top 100 or out of the top 50, but has to play 5 consecutive matches against top 8 opponents. All right, and I just want to mention one more thing, because, you know, if you're like me and you like this greatest of all time argument, then you're going to go back and say, well, what about these other great champions and how did they do in the year-end tournament? So the other two sort of older champions that deserve recognition for having done so well in the year-end final, one is Sampras. Sampras won 5 year-end finals, and then the other one is Lendl, and no one else has won 5, right? So in this elite club in the history of tennis, there are just 4 players that have won 5 or more year-end finals, and that's Lendl, Sampras, Djokovic, and Federer.